us a short countdown. Welcome in, everybody, to the Storycraft Cafe. I'm your host, Hank Garner. Today, I am super excited to welcome Steve Cavanagh here to the show to talk about his brand new audio original called The Cross. And I've had the opportunity to listen to this, and what a fantastic story this is. I'm a big fan of the Eddie Flynn series to begin with, and then to see that this new story came out and that I got to experience it first in audio form. It's about 4.5 hours long, so it's novella length. Would you say, Steve?
Novella length, yeah.
Yeah, and it was such a bit of seasoning on the Eddie series, while also kind of pushing the character forward, and I really loved it. So, welcome to the show, Steve.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you, Steve. Like I said, I'm a big fan of legal thrillers in general, and I discovered Eddie Flynn a couple of years ago and went way down the rabbit hole. And when I saw that The Cross was coming out, I said, "Oh, I've got to talk to Steve about this." So, first off, how did you get started? What One question I'd love to ask people, let me just ask it this way. What is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
Oh, goodness me. I've no idea. Um, I always love, I'm Irish, so stories are just around you all the time when you're growing up. From grandparents and, my parents, and my mum was a huge reader.
Yeah.
And she always encouraged me to read, and she would go through a couple of books a week easily. So we
Yeah.
were always in secondhand bookstores and libraries, and I sort of picked that up. So it came from reading, really. In terms of me wanting to be a writer, I'm sort of a working class guy from Belfast in Northern Ireland, and the thought, it never really occurred to me that I could be a writer, because nobody I knew was a writer, if you know what I mean. I
Yeah.
didn't think that was a possibility at all. So what I did do was, when I was in my sort of late teens, I started to write screenplays, because
Hmm.
there was a few screenwriters from Northern Ireland.
Okay.
And I thought, well, maybe that's a possibility. So I managed to get an agent, but never got anything sold. And then I didn't write anything after that. What I did do was then, in my sort of mid-30s, my mum passed away quite suddenly. And she was the only person who ever encouraged me to write. So I thought, well, I could write a book for her, something that she would have liked. So that's how I started writing. So I think maybe I would have liked to have written, but the serious thought of I could write something didn't occur to me until I was well into my 30s.
Interesting. Interesting. I am from the southern United States, and a lot of us in this part of the country trace our heritage to Ireland, and
Right?
there's a lot of Irish blood that runs through my part of the country, and we also have a strong storytelling heritage. And I've often wondered if that is connected back to our roots in Ireland at some point. What do you attribute the storytelling gene, if you will, to certain parts of the world, or certain certain people groups, or is it the environment? What is it that breeds storytellers, do you think?
I don't know. Could be alcohol, Hank.
That's always a
Might have
possibility.
something to do with it. I don't know. It's a very rich literary
Yeah.
heritage.
Yeah.
And there was in old Ireland, there was something called a shanosh.
Okay.
That's a profession, a storyteller.
Okay.
And that's someone who would travel around telling stories. And they were treated very well, and they would go village to village. So there's always been there's just always been that thing. I don't know if it's a gene. I don't know if it's a landscape.
Yeah.
We can't really make anything. You've seen the movie Titanic, you'll know what I'm talking about. So, we don't make a lot. We don't do anything else. We tell stories,
Yeah.
and we sort of, we don't have, and the stuff that we do make goes all over the world, and it's mostly alcohol. It's what we export: alcohol and bricklayers and poets.
And
That's not a
poets.
bad culture.
Yeah. I've seen worse cultures. Let me just put it
Yeah.
that way. People will fight over just about anything, and
Yes. Well, we do as well. There's various. Brendan Behan, who was a great poet and playwright, uh, he said that if there were only three people left on Earth, and they were in Dublin and they were
mm,
Irish, two of them would be in one corner talking about the other one. That's that's just the way we are.
understood. Understood. When you had that motivation to write a story for your mother or in honor of your mother, what was the first idea that you had, and did that idea become your first published work, or are you like a lot of writers and have desk drawer novels, trunk novels, whatever the nomenclature is?
No, I don't. I'm one of those annoying people. The first page of the defense, as published, is the first fiction that I wrote.
Wow. Okay.
Um, so I had an idea. I'm a lawyer. I was a lawyer. I'm
Okay.
retired now, so I'm a recovering lawyer. Um, but I was cross-examining a witness one day, and it occurred to me that trial lawyers and con artists have all the same skills: distraction, manipulation, misdirection, all of that. That's psychological warfare and battle of words that happens between a lawyer and a witness, or a lawyer and a judge, or their opponent. That's what great con artists do, the same thing. And I thought that's a good idea for a character, a con artist who becomes a lawyer, but they never really give up that con artist life. They use that, in their legal career.
Yeah.
And so when I thought about writing a book, I remembered that I had that idea for that character, and the book came from him. So yeah, that's what started it off.
I was going to be a little more gracious and say that trial attorneys, especially, are great storytellers. But
Yes,
just go straight con artists. That works too.
that works too. But again, that's right. A
Yeah.
trial is, the winner is who tells the best story,
Right.
and who can tear apart their opponent's story
Sure.
the best as well. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So was it easy to take the life you were immersed in your day job and fictionalize that? Like, what were some of the pitfalls that you had to stay away from, and what things maybe came super easy that maybe you didn't expect?
None of it was easy at
Mm,
all.
of
I
course.
didn't take really anything from my life for it. Um, like, I was practicing in Northern Ireland. The book that I wrote and the books that I write are all set in New York City or
Okay.
America. Um, so I wanted to set the book there. I'd thought about writing something in the UK or Ireland, but we have a dual system of representation. So we have solicitors, who are people that wear suits and work in an office. Clients come in to see them. And then most of the time, when it comes time for a trial, the solicitor will employ a barrister, who are the people who wear the funny, strange wigs and the
Right.
long black, weird gowns, and
Yeah.
they go and argue in court. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to write two. I didn't know if I could write one good character. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't feel good about trying to write two, and I didn't want to write one who had to wear a strange wig. So I thought, well, if I set the books in the US,
Yeah.
that solves the problem. What I did bring to it is what I know about the drama of a trial.
Hmm.
and how, how that really works. That psychological battle, the war of words that happens, which I always find very, very compelling. And I hope other people did too. So yeah, I that's what I brought to it. It was my experience as a lawyer, and talk about how the law works or doesn't work in most cases. But in terms of real world experience, in terms of clients that I'd had or people that I've met, none of that I bring to it. I create my own world, my own characters there.
After practicing in Ireland, but writing about the U.S., was there a lot of little details that you had to swap out because even though our countries are similar, I would imagine there are some finer points of process and jurisprudence that are obviously
Yeah,
different. You know,
absolutely. I researched. Sorry for that pinging. I
it's okay.
researched a lot of law in America, and a lot of some of it is similar. But basically, I keep all of that out of my books.
Yeah.
I find legal procedures really boring
Mm.
as a lawyer, so I don't expect my readers to be interested in it. Um, what I'm more interested in is the psychological side of things. Being in a courtroom and accused of something you didn't do, how does that feel?
Yeah.
How does it feel to be representing someone you know is innocent and you're trying to get a result for them, and their life is in your hands, and at the same time the prosecution are lying, and witnesses are lying, and people aren't telling the truth? That
Hmm.
battle, that's what I'm more interested in rather than legal procedures. I have to know a little bit to make it all credible
Yeah.
and to be able to work the drama in around the cracks in that. But there's very little, if any, legal procedure in the books. I'm more interested in suspense for
Yeah.
the reader rather than legal jargon or legal elements. Sometimes I will stumble upon a fascinating quirk of the law, and only if I find it very interesting will I put it in there. So the reader will always know what's at stake and what's happening, and will learn about courtrooms and the way a trial works and how a jury thinks about a trial and what the lawyers are trying to do. That's what, but it's making it more interesting and more in terms of the stakes for the character, and rather than any legal procedure.
Well, there are a lot of aspects to the lawyer's life that are not courtroom sexy.
Yeah,
The courtroom battle is actually a pretty slim percentage of what the lawyer does, and
yeah,
I think John Grisham, who is from close to where I live, and is, a bit of a local literary hero. He kind of plays up the mundane nature of a lot of lawyers' lives. It kind of
yeah.
shows, kind of pulls the curtain back, and it's not all exciting. And so I love the way that you um, kind of brush aside a lot of the mundane and get to the actual psychological battle of what's going on, in the characters' minds. And do you ever get any pushback from readers that this isn't exactly what a lawyer's life is like all the time?
No, I haven't. Again, most of my books, I won't go for, say, it can take a couple of years sometimes
Yeah,
between a murder happening and the trial.
yeah,
I don't cover all that time in the book. I will, sometimes we won't even talk about the book won't start with a murder. The book might start a week before the trial starts or something like that. So I'm always writing about a really condensed period of time.
hmm,
So my books may take place over the course of a week or 2 weeks, in real time. So I'm only focusing on the interesting bits. I'm not interested in a realistic portrayal of lawyers' lives. Just as a police procedural or a
sure,
police novel is not interested at all with how cops really do their jobs.
right,
Most murders are solved by the officer sitting at a desk and figuring something out, or finding something on a computer, or something like that, or in a lab. You know,
Sure.
they don't go and chase down bad guys most of the time. So
Yeah.
none of that, any of that, is really realistically portrayed in
Right.
crime novels,
Not
because
even in
it wouldn't be any fun to read.
right. What? Not even in true crime. Nonfiction books. That we don't even include all the mundane details in the quote unquote true stories. So we novelize them, so to speak, because don't want to people don't want to understand what it's not entertaining. So let's get
Yeah,
to the entertaining part. Right.
exactly.
Yeah. So The Defense was the first book that kicked off this series and kicked off your writing career. How was that book received in the beginning? Was it a runaway success? Was it a slow burn? Kind of what was your entry to the market?
Pretty bad. Um,
As is
uh,
most people.
so the defense didn't. The first three books in the series didn't sell very well anywhere, because I was kind of doing a new thing. I was trying to really make um, a novel about a lawyer really exciting and suspenseful, and there was no one really doing that in the UK
Hmm.
other than Grisham.
Sure.
Were very few other novelists touching on this, or going near it. So it was a bit new. All the books, got great reviews and were nominated for awards and won awards. The third novel won the Crime Writers Gold Dagger for Book of the Year, but nobody bought them.
Mm,
So my fourth book I wrote was a book called 13,
mm. Yeah.
and the tagline on that book, which is my idea for the book, and I wanted this on the cover. The tagline is, "The serial killer isn't on trial; he's on the jury." And because actually, I remember something funny enough. You brought up Grisham. I remember something that he had said that I
Yeah.
had forgotten. He said he only before he writes a book, he asks himself two questions. One, is this a story that would be good enough to sustain over a whole novel? Is it a
Sure.
good story? Does it have all those elements that make a good story? Second of all, is this a story that a lot of people will want to read about? And I don't think I was kind of asking myself that second question well enough. So when I had the idea for 13, I thought, okay, I think a lot of people, if they see that tagline and that cover, it's intriguing.
Hmm.
Uh, I think they'll pick it up. And of course they did. So 13 did really well, changed my life all over the world, and continues to do so. So from having up until 2018, I think we had sold probably about 10,000 copies in total of my books everywhere. And I found out today now we have sold well over 4 million copies
Wow.
in 40 languages. And a million in the UK alone, well over a million in the UK alone. So um, the books after that, I had that same approach. I like a hook. So there was a book recently published in the US, 50/50, and it's about two
Hmm.
sisters who are on trial for murder, and they accuse each other of the murder. They're both accused of the murder, and they're accusing each other, and which one is guilty. So I like that. Now I try to always think of a big hook for a book, and that's not necessarily anything to do with the law or a trial. It's a big question, this big nugget of suspense that will hopefully bring the reader through the book.
I'm interested in what your relationship with your publisher was during those first three novels that your words were not connecting with readers. They were winning awards and all that,
Yeah,
but they weren't moving copies. Um, and but then your fourth book was a breakout hit that
yeah.
then so what was your relationship with the publisher during those first three novels? You obviously had someone on staff there that was in your corner, that was rooting for you, and
I
but like
did.
what,
And that
because
person,
there's probably a lot of writers that could break out but never get the opportunity to.
that's right. That's right. I did have someone like that in my corner, and that person's now my agent. That's John Wood, in the UK. So John really fought for me, and he left publishing, and he's now an agent, and he's my agent now. So anyone that enjoys an Eddie Flynn book, and from the fourth one on, a lot of that has to do with John. But there was still doubts about it, even after that. And no one, I think, was really expecting 13 to catch on. It just did, and it went. The first order for 13 from the Waterstones, the big bookstore chain here, was for 250 copies for the whole of the UK. And that sold out pretty quickly, and they ordered more, and they sold out, and they ordered more, and then suddenly it took off. It did what we asked it to do. We got a small promotion with a newspaper for that book.
Yeah.
That if you bought this newspaper, you got the book for a cheaper price in a supermarket, and that helped it as well. That gave it a real boost. But 13 was never a bestseller. I never got on any bestseller charts. All my books after that did, because a lot of readers bought that book and thought, I like this guy, Eddie Flynn, and went and read other novels, and then bought the next one when it came out. So, luck has a part of it as well.
Yeah.
But I think in some ways you make your own luck. I was definitely aiming for I was trying to show readers, you don't have to read, you'll be into courtroom thrillers to like my books. And I still, to this day, see reviews saying, I don't like legal thrillers, but I picked up this book and it was, I really liked it. And I'm always grateful for that, because they are more psychological suspense than legal thriller.
Yeah.
There is legal stuff in it and courtroom shenanigans and all of that. But it's the psychological suspense which I think draws in most readers. And I certainly love writing that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people had to yet to be convinced. So, like my third book, The Liar, which won the Gold Dagger, which was rejected in the US. So there's nothing that I can do about that.
Right.
I'm now with Atria, and I have a home there for Eddie Flynn and the series. I'm very happy there.
Yeah.
And they seem happy with me, so everything's going well now, and they're catching up. The backlist is being published, and Simon and Schuster have brought out The Cross as well in audio, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But is there, looking back, is there anything that you can put your finger on specifically that helped 13 to break through where the others didn't? Was it an approach to approaching the story differently from the beginning in hopes of capturing a certain market? Was it marketing? What was it about it?
It didn't have any marketing. I wrote it the same as I would write any of the other books, but it had a good cover. It had a jury box with a red jury chair.
Okay.
And then that tagline. So we had, for the first time, I think we had, so it wasn't like a guy with a gun on the cover, or a court, the pillars of a courthouse, or someone running up the courtroom steps. This was that tagline. So the tagline and the cover and the title all worked together as a package.
Yeah.
And I think when people saw that and were intrigued enough to pick it up off the shelf.
But Steve, we've all been told to never judge a book by its cover.
I know. Well, it's not just the cover; it's what's on the cover.
Ridiculous on it.
It is totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
That cover, tagline, and title worked, and that's something now that I work on with all my publishers, trying to get that triumvirate. And not every book has a tagline. I'm not saying if you're an author you have to have a tagline on it, but for me that's real estate. You're relying totally on the title to sell your book. And I've said to publishers, you make my name a lot smaller. we've got real estate here to sell something, and they're all very happy to do it.
Yeah.
So, and we work together collaboratively to get that. So I think it was having a good product, an intriguing thing, and
Yeah.
it organically took off. We had a little bit of luck and we got it into one or two supermarkets.
Yeah.
Um, and then, but no one really believed. I don't think anyone believed in it. Certainly, I thought it had a chance.
Yeah.
But before that book came out, I was already being asked, to write other things. And I did actually write another thing after 13. I wrote a standalone called Twisted. So before 13 came out, I'd written a standalone psychological thriller because I thought, well, if that 13 doesn't sell and doesn't do well, I can't write a better Eddie Flynn book than that right now. So
Yeah.
that might have been it. But thankfully, it did take off and the series continued.
Well, speaking of that, I think a lot of writers, when they're beginning their career, especially, think that they are going to resonate with readers, and then those readers will always come back for a Steve Cavanagh book, and that they will trust you because you told them a great story. I think
Yeah.
there's a certain segment of those readers for sure, and then there are readers who will show up for Eddie Flynn, and
Yeah.
whatever situation you put Eddie Flynn in, I'm here for Eddie Flynn. Um, have you seen any way to tell what readers are going to connect with? Are they connecting with you because you're a trusted storyteller? Are they connecting for the character? What is it that readers really latch on to?
I don't know. In terms of readers coming back to me,
Yeah.
I think they like that they've had a good story told. Apart from 13, the other big selling book I have in the US is Kill for Me, Kill for You, which is standalone and nothing to do with Eddie Flynn.
Interesting.
And a lot of readers have come to the series because of that standalone. And I do standalones every now and again because I like lots of stories, and some story ideas I have wouldn't fit an Eddie Flynn book. Um, and so I like to go outside the box and I'll do a standalone. But a lot of people read Kill for Me, Kill for You, and then picked up the series and were happy to continue. So I like to think that it's me and that they like reading the type of book that I write. So it's fast paced. There's lots of twists you won't see coming, and there's characters you can be invested in and believe in. And you're desperate to know how things work out for them. So that's the type of suspense novel that I write.
Yeah.
When it's a legal thriller or a psychological thriller, something like that, I'd like to think it's that. There are still, dedicated Eddie Flynn super fans that just want another Eddie Flynn, and God bless them, and I love them for that. I will sometimes stretch my legs and do other things, but I'm not doing something wildly different.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, okay, there's no Eddie Flynn book this year. Here's my poetry on the rivers and brooks of Ireland this year. I'm not tasking them with that. I'm
Yeah.
giving them something else that's exciting and has all the sort of brand stuff that all the stuff they like in the other books they'll find in the standalones, and vice versa. So I don't know. I'll see. The other thing is that some readers are, well, if it's a series, I have to start at book one, but not with my series. I took great inspiration from a friend, Lee Child. You can pick up any single one, any single
Yeah.
Jack Reacher book anywhere in the series, and you'll have just as good a reading experience as if you've read them from the beginning.
Right.
And that's what I try to do with my books.
Yeah.
So you can read, if you've never read or listened to an Eddie Flynn book before, and you pick up The Cross or Witness It or 50-50 as your first book, I want you to enjoy it and have just the same experience as someone who has read them all and then has come to this. So that's the challenge.
If Eddie Flynn were traipsing through the rivers and streams and brooks of Ireland, maybe that's a story idea. I don't know.
Maybe
you never know. Maybe
Carrie.
there's a body. Maybe there's a body in there. Who knows? Um, your brand new release coming up, The Cross, is like I said at the beginning, I love the story. One thing that we have learned over the last several years is that audiobooks are the fastest growth market in publishing right now. And it may be because we're all carrying around a supercomputer in our pocket with lots of
Yeah.
storage, and usually with headphones attached, via Bluetooth or whatever. And it's just super convenient to listen to stories now while we're driving in the car, while we're running errands or whatever. We can be consuming stories where, in the past we would need to sit down in our favorite reading chair and stop the whole world around us while we did this. And now stories are much more easily consumable now. From a writer's perspective, when you're coming up with a story like The Cross, that, and I'm assuming that from the beginning this was conceived as an audio first production. Is that right, or was this a story idea that just happened to find distribution that way?
It's weird. So a little bit of a strange story with this. So I wrote this book in 2016, 2015,
Okay.
2016, and it was published in the UK as an ebook only.
Okay.
And Simon & Schuster had asked me if I wanted to write something for a short audio. And I said, well, I have this story, The Cross, and it's never been released anywhere else. And they read it and loved it and wanted to do something with it. So my narrator for the Eddie Flynn series is a brilliant, brilliant audio narrator called Adam Sims. So we got Adam involved, and he was really excited to do it. So that's how it came about.
Okay.
And it's an interesting tale for it to come out that way. But I write very audibly, if you know what I mean. I'm very interested in sound as well as the image in my book. So it seemed to translate very well to audio.
Yeah.
And I was really pleased for it to come out as this audio original, because it's never been as anything else in America.
This novella length work is structurally a little different than your full length novels. What was your approach to this story, and what did you know from the beginning? This is going to be a novella. This is going to be a tighter focus. And how do you approach those?
Well, the Northern Ireland Arts Council had given me an award and asked me to write something short. And I can't write anything short, so it turned into the length of half of a book.
Sure.
When they asked me, it was 2015, and I wrote this. I thought, what am I going to do? And I got the idea for this. I was watching TV one night, and I saw that a man in Manhattan who was the police had stopped him for selling cigarettes, and he was wrestled to the ground, and someone basically leaned on him or had their arm around him, and he was basically choked to death on the street, and someone videoed it. The man's name was Eric Garner. This is years before George Floyd.
Sure. I remember the story.
Nothing really happened to those officers, and I couldn't understand what the hell. So I looked at, I didn't know if the police were allowed. I didn't think they were allowed to choke people in New York, and I looked, and of course they're not. And chokeholds were outlawed years ago. But I also read a report that said that a vast amount of people who were arrested in New York complained of being choked. And those complaints, and I looked at how the whole complaint system worked. There was I think it was at one stage 500 complaints of people, and sometimes multiple complaints from different people who didn't know each other against the same officer. And nothing was done. And eventually, I think there was only one or two officers were ever called up for it and disciplined. And you would think, God, if they find that you've choked somebody, what would happen to you? I'm thinking, well, I've lost a job, they're prosecuted. No, they lost half a week's pay.
Wow.
and I was so cross about this. So I wanted to ask the senior ups in New York City Police
Hmm.
Department, the commissioners and the captains, and I wanted to ask them a lot of questions about what happened to this poor man. But of course, I can't. So I did it through Eddie Flynn. So in the cross, Eddie is representing a widow of a man who was killed by the NYPD, and that was my reason for writing the book. Now it's a different story from what happened to per Mr. Garner. I
Sure.
didn't want to write a pastiche of something that had happened tragically to a real person. So, and I also wanted it to be entertaining, because I think if you entertain someone and you engage them, you can deal with real issues in the
Of
book as
course
well.
you
And
can.
sometimes they hit a bit harder, you
Right.
know. And I never want to be standing on a stool, lecturing people. So I bring in these issues from the side, if you like, and then people can take them and do what they want with them. But in the cross-examination scene in that novella and the audiobook, all of the statistics and facts that Eddie uses are all real. That's not made up. I didn't make any of it up. That's what I
Nice.
would have asked and the police commissioners and the assistant police commissioners if I was doing that. And eventually, things did happen, and there was some, rough form of justice for what
Hmm.
happened to that man. But that's the origin of why I wrote the book.
It's interesting that you talk about if you make the story entertaining, you can absolutely deal with serious topics because you get the reader engaged and you don't just turn them off. A little bit like if a person writes deep psychological thriller or horror, a lot of times if you use levity sprinkled through the story, the more intense scenes seem to hit even harder because you've given the reader a chance to catch their breath and to let their guard down. And the same way with approaching real world topics, but if you make it entertaining, you allow people to let their guard down. And that sort of thinking.
That's the sort of thing. That's the exact thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing with my books. I'll have a very intense, suspenseful scene, and then we'll have to have a break after that, and there might
Yeah.
be a little joke or two in there because the reader has to come down a little bit
Right.
before we pick them up the next hill and put their blood pressure up again. So yeah, that works. If it's all at 100 miles an hour, it becomes then if everything is suspenseful and frightening and hard hitting, nothing is, because it's just a
Right.
book. Book feels like it's banging you across the head.
Right.
So yeah, there has to be those peaks and troughs. And with me, very few of my books deal with real, hard hitting issues. A few of them do, but what I find is you can accomplish more with fiction in terms of telling a story and getting someone interested in something real that's happened or an issue than you can with writing a nonfiction.
Yeah. What's the old saying? It's the lie that tells the truth, or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, The Cross comes out everywhere November 18th, and this is definitely a story you don't want to miss. If you're just experiencing Eddie Flynn for the first time, this is an excellent on ramp. And then you'll want to get into the whole series and figure out what this character is about. And you're going to love it as much as I do. Steve, if folks are just experiencing your work for the first time and want to dig into all the great stuff that you're up to, what's a good place for them to start online to learn all about you, learn about your work, your back catalog, and find that on ramp like we talked about?
These days, Instagram is probably the best place. I do have a website which is not bang up to date because I'm not very good at websites, but Instagram or Facebook is pretty good. You'll find me, Steve Cavanagh. It's SSCav1, I think. But you'll see me and you'll see a blue tick at me. Don't follow any imposters, just me. But you'll see the blue ticks, and that's probably the best place to find out about my upcoming releases, and you can see what I've had for my dinner and what my job's been up to.
Excellent. Well, we'll post links to those profiles in the show notes to make it easy for folks to find you. Go pick up the cross the day that it's released. You won't regret it. I promise. Steve, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show.
Thank you so much indeed, Hank. I've really had a good time.